Question 2. Is the attention-grabbing headline or title supported by actual facts? For instance, take a look at this popular book called Why Evolution is True. We don't even have to go any further than the jacket on this one, because on it you got a dino evolving into a bird in 3 simple steps. There you go. But then on the inside, this is written, and I kid you not. The jacket depicts a chronological sequence of fossils showing the evolution of birds. We do not know whether the actual line of descent included, now wait for it, the first 3.
Well, so, I mean, obviously that's just the jacket, like, and that's just the cover. My guess is that they were wanting to visually depict that, you know, reptiles evolved into birds, which we have fossil evidence for, but more than that, we have other kinds of evidence that suggest this kind of descent. Whether or not those first 3 that's on the jacket are in the exact line of lineage for that particular bird is what's in question here. Like that's why it says whether the actual line of descent included the first 3 on the cover. So like that's up in the air, but there's no question about the fact that reptiles evolved into birds.
Say what now? Doesn't that mean these 3 shouldn't be on the cover then?
No, it doesn't mean that those 3 shouldn't be on the cover. It's just being honest about our knowledge about specific lines of evolution. Like we can't say for sure that those 3 species are in that particular evolutionary line for that particular bird. But what we can say is that reptiles slowly evolved into what we have now as birds.
Which means all you got is a modern bird, right? No evolution, just a bird.
No, not a modern, like, I mean, obviously, well, the end product there is a modern bird, but even even in the past, you know, a few million years, like since the dinosaurs were wiped out, you have various different evolutionary lines for birds. They've changed. They've always changed. He just acts like, oh, this modern bird existed back in the time of the dinosaurs. Like that's what he's trying to insinuate here, is that this bird has just always existed. That's just not true.
About worldview filling in gaps, on to question 3. What do the graphics on evolutionary charts indicate? I mean, they sure do look convincing. For instance, on this one from the dinosaur book, you got solid red columns and white columns showing gradual progression over time. But let's read the almost imperceptible 2-point font over here. It reads, tinted areas indicate solid fossil evidence, which means the white areas represent no solid fossil evidence, right?
Well, saying no solid fossil evidence kind of gives it this air of, oh, these fossils don't exist. And that's not exactly true, but also like we're not given any kind of real information about what fossils this is even representing. I feel like this right here is just to show how species change over time, how species are interconnected, and how, you know, you can start with one species of animal and it diversifies into several different lines, several different kinds of species. To say no solid fossil evidence, I mean, we don't even know what fossil evidence we're talking about, but what we can say for sure, like if you just look down here in the bottom that's showing, right here, like this little area, fuck, I'm not a weatherman. You can tell I wasn't a weatherman. Let me see if I can point to it. This guy right here, right? We just look at that, you know, you could see what fossil evidence that we have. Now, it's pretty easy to see the commonalities in the morphological nature of these animals. So we can obviously tell that multiple of these animals are related to a ancestor that we don't have fossil evidence for, we have not so good fossil evidence for, but we can tell that they're all related because of the traits that they exhibit. And so we can make further arguments for like some of these earlier ones because of what layer they were found in the geologic column and everything like that. We can know that they came first. They branched off first from this original, but this original species line further diversified later on into all these different versions of itself. And this is all identified through similar traits that are exhibited in the fossils. What he's expecting or what he's requiring is literal physical evidence of every minute change. But we're not going to find that. Fossils are incredibly hard to create, and for them to naturally form is even harder. To expect every minute change to be represented in the fossil record is unreasonable. What we expect to find are certain species showing up. Those certain species exhibit certain traits that we can lump together in different clades, and we can group together by the traits that they exhibit, and that's how we can group them, just like is on the screen here. And that's how all of these graphics are designed. That's basically this cladistics sort of view here. That's what that entire field is grouping organisms by traits. But he's expecting to find every single minute change in an organism, and that's just not going to happen.
Okay, then take them away. Uh-oh, looks like patterns hauntingly reminiscent of creation, I'd say, right?
No, this is not patterns reminiscent of creation, okay? For one thing, for it to be reminiscent of creation, you would need them to all be starting at the same time, because that's what creation is. It's not this slow, gradual development of different species and different species popping up at different times in the geological column. It's all of them being created at the exact same time. Every single one of those species should be found in the earliest, like 248 million years ago layer. They should all appear there, but they don't, because they evolved slowly over time.
From their own charts. And the same thing goes for the dotted lines on this one. Look at all of them. Just so we're clear, dotted lines indicate zero evidence. Remove them and what do you get? No transitional forms or evidence of gradual progression. A bat is a bat, a kangaroo is a kangaroo, and a horse is a horse.
So that's just not true. If we go back and we look at this, he's assuming that the dotted lines means that there's no evidence whatsoever to connect those creatures together. But there is evidence. There's evidence in shared traits and shared morphology. So we can lump them together by using, our best hypothesis about, the shared traits and how traits would have developed. We can make a solid argument for connecting those animals in that kind of way. But what he's saying here is that there's no evidence. There's no transitional forms. That's just not true. He went from saying no solid evidence to no evidence whatsoever. And this is something that Forrest pointed out as well. That is the sort of bait and switch that they play on you here, is that they're trying to make it seem like there's just no evidence for it. There's no reason to think that these animals are connected or they evolved in any kind of way, which is not true.
Of course, unless, of course, the horse is Mr. Ed. Look, people, all I'm saying here is
I fucking hate how they do their fucking videos.
if you got facts, put them in there. If you don't, leave them out.
Well, I mean, that's a little bit unfair for the graphics that they provided, because they're ripping the graphics out of context. Who's to say that the context didn't further explain the graph? Who's to say that the context doesn't further explain that, there's no physical fossil evidence to make this connection. Like, we don't have every single minute change that occurred in this particular evolutionary line. We don't have that, but what we do have is a strong hypothesis to connect this animal to this animal, because there's no way that this animal exhibiting these traits can't be related to this animal exhibiting similar but slightly different traits. They're wanting you to think that just simply doesn't exist. And I don't understand why somebody would be convinced by this.
Don't draw downright dubious, daft, dare I declare, dunderheaded dotted lines of deliberate deception dogmatically and dastardly doodled to disguise definitive data. No.
Yes, that was a lot of D to get through right there for a Christian video.
Just admit what you actually see. Overwhelming evidence of living things, according to their kinds, suddenly appearing.
Define kinds. That's all I ask. Define kinds. You got the facts on your side there, Broseph. Then why don't you define what a kind is? My guess is that they would define kind by morphologically unique. The kangaroo is morphologically unique when compared to a gorilla. But you know what? Kangaroos are marsupials, and there are other things that are marsupials as well. Could they be related in some kind of fashion? Probably. What he wants to do is say, hey, unless you have every single minute change between one organism connecting it to another organism, then you cannot say that those two organisms are related. But we know that that's not how biology works. Biology doesn't just automatically poof into existence because a magical wizard cast an incantation to create everything. Shit changes over time. Biological systems slowly change over time. And we also don't expect to have every single minute change. We expect to have the fossils that are the result of the natural processes that create fossils, which is incredibly rare compared to how many things have died in the past. Fossils are actually incredibly rare. But he wants to act like if I can't see it, then there's no good reason to believe any argument made for it. But considering all of the context surrounding biological systems, how they change and all that, we can make these kinds of inferences. We can solidly say this animal is related to that animal because of these reasons, because of these traits, because of this shared morphology that they have.